Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. It's time to talk Season 1 Rogue. Going into that new season, we're going back to level 1, we're working our way up to 50 to our Paragon, gathering the aspects and beyond all the way to Torment once more. Rogue is going to be excellent at this, just as it was before, particularly with imbuement builds, as there is incredible potential for that in Season 1, all thanks to that new Wrathful Heart, which has a chance to apply all imbuement effects at half their potency for free, which sounds crazy, but obviously we're not going to get our hands on that until World Tier 4. In the meantime though, we can enjoy a variety of buffs and benefits from the 1.1 patch and a pile of really useful hearts on the way to World Tier 4. Sounds good, right? But don't let that confuse you. This is all still in the context of the horrible 1.1 patch itself. Our damage is absolutely destroyed by the nerfs to crit and especially vulnerable damage. It's fair to say we're dealing half or less, especially when you consider the multipliers that are no longer scaling nearly as high. We're also going to be way more squishy as they've nerfed defensive stuff into the ground, and so we'll be punished a lot more for any mistake. In the case of Rogue being a more squishy class, we should really fear one-shots now, as that's just going to be part of the gameplay. Cool. Still, we can be somewhat optimistic in that as a class, we've been hit a lot less than other classes, especially when you stop and look at Sorcerer, who are just dead. But what build will we take into the new season to power level and grind our way efficiently to World Tier 4? It's Twisting Blades. Again, look, Twisting Blades is not only good, it's absolutely king at everything. Single target, mob clear, mobility, damage avoidance, CC, it's fantastic. Every other main sort of meta build for Rogue is also hilariously really good. The balance is great for this class, but we can argue, say Penetrating Shot, that takes a bit of setup, or Barrage, that has issues when you have a stray mob that runs in the way and tanks the hits. You can argue even with the Rapid Flurry, requires a bit of reasonable amount of time to set up as a build, in that combo points really starts to pop off when you have the unique dagger Condemnation, which we certainly won't have at first. Twisting Blades, on the other hand, brilliant from the start. Oh, and a little warning, actually, I've made this video just before the launch of Season 1. The footage of me is on my Eternal Realm character on the post-nerfed 1.1 Rogue. So using the leveling build with just some basic aspects you'll be able to collect. I've made this video just before Season 1 launch and tried to record footage that, actually represents how the build will play at that launch. But yeah, let's get started. All right, here we go. I've reset my talent tree so we can go through this together manually from each individual level. So we're going to start with Puncture and of course Enhanced Puncture as always. It's just so good. Then we're going to pick up Twisting Blades. Of course, we're going to enhance it to improve the damage, and instead of going for advancing Twisting Blades, we're actually going to go for improved Twisting Blades for our key passive, which we'll talk about later. But until we get the key passive, there's no reason to do that, so we will go for advanced Twisting Blades for the time being. We just need one more level to actually reach the next tier, although I'd like to put it in Twisting Blades fully. We want to get the fundamental puncture to generate vulnerability with our basic, as it'll be a key source of our energy anyway. It's very worth the effort. This brings us to our next tier, where of course we're picking up Dash. Dash is going to be a nice bit of mobility at this point, and we're going to take other enhancements at a later point. For the moment though, we want to level Twisting Blades as much as possible. So we're going to do that. So we're going to put more points into it right now, and at 5 out of 5, we'll actually reach the next tree where we're going to pick up 2 abilities. Firstly, Poison Trap, and secondly, Dark Shroud. We're going to improve Dark Shroud first, going for Enhanced Dark Shroud. This has been improved this patch. It now has 4% more chance, so 14% chance for the shrouds to not be consumed. And hey, while it's active, we're also going to get movement speed, which is going to be really nice for the leveling. Then we can pick up the Enhanced Poison Trap, so it'll actually knock those enemies down when we trigger it, which is going to be very nice. Bringing us to the next tier, where of course we're picking up our Imbuement, which is Shadow Imbuement for the AoE purposes and General Clear for leveling. We'll enhance it, and of course go for a blended, so it's generating an AoE vulnerable, great for when we're leveling early. Now we want to make this better by going for Shadow Crash. It might cause a stun on the shadow damage, but we're doing it for consuming shadows to help with our energy generation, which is a major issue at this point in the game. 3 out of 3 on that is going to give us 30 energy as we kill enemies with shadow damage, so it's going to be a lot of energy generation, which we really need. That unlocks our ultimate tree, so we're ready to not take any ultimates. We just need to spend 10 points to unlock our key passive. Down here, there's some really important passives. Firstly, Trap Mastery. When Poison Trap activates, we're going to gain, at 3 out of 3, 12% increased critical strike chance against vulnerable and crowd control enemies, so that is amazing. Every time we press our Poison Trap, suddenly we're juiced up with crit strike chance. Further, 1 point into Adrenaline Rush is going to get us to Haste, which when we're above 50% energy, we gain 15% movement speed, but when below, we gain 15% attack speed. Both very useful. And we have the exact perfect 3 out of 3 thing, which is concussive. Concussive causes knockdowns or knockbacks on enemies to give us another 12% crit strike chance against them for 3 seconds. This is guaranteed when we use enhanced poison trap, so you put it down and the enemy under it, or enemies, will just get knocked down, triggering concussive on those enemies, which is just brilliant. This perfectly brings us to our key passive. We're picking up momentum. Cutthroat skills grant stacks of momentum if they hit a stunned, dazed, or frozen enemy, or hit an enemy from behind. And this is where things really get interesting. We'll pick up now our enhanced dash, which causes a major critical strike damage improvement to enemies we've dashed through. And then we're going to take disciplined dash. Dash will slow enemies it hits by 30%, or even daze them if they're already slowed, such as that they might be by puncture or the first dash you did. So this works great in synergy with the momentum passive, helping us build up stacks consistently. When it's going, it gives us 20% damage reduction, massive energy regen, which is vital, and even a nice bit of movement speed. Further, to improve the odds of that always stacking up and being going, we're going to drop advancing to swap to improved twisting blades. Like we said, enemies are dazed while impaled by the twisting blades, causing momentum stacks. So now it's all about just cleaning up with the rest of the points that we have, starting with the very powerful passive of exploit for 1 point to get to malice, the even more powerful passive. So we're going to level that up to 3 out of 3. I happen to have some item contribution, so it's showing more than it would be for you, but it's 9% times increased damage to vulnerable enemies, which is amazing. Then the other points can go into exploit to improve our damage to healthy and injured enemies by a lot. While we're here, we can put 1 point into deadly venom so that we can unlock 3 levels in debilitating toxins. Poisoned enemies will deal 15% less damage, helping us with survivability as we AoE spread poison with poison trap. We're also going to pick up 1 point of countering poison trap at this stage, though you can pick this up earlier, pretty much around the time you get the imbuements if you have the point spare. This will allow poison trap to completely reset the imbuement of shadow imbuement, that cooldown, so we can consistently have it going. We're going to come up to the weapon mastery passive now, putting 3 out of 3 into that, making us deal much more damage to healthy enemies if we're using daggers or swords, which would be ideal, just straight flat out increased damage. From here we have our remaining 8 points, so we're going to put it into 3 out of 3 sturdy first, giving us some nice close damage reduction. We're going to put 3 out of 3 into stutter step, which is going to give us nice movement speed after we crit strike, and the last 2 points are going into the newly changed siphoning strikes, which is based on lucky hit. Sadly, we won't have a lot of that when we're leveling because we're changing gears so much. That's why we put it in at the end here, since it's not as consistent as the other things we picked up. But that is all the points that we're going to be using on our way to 50 with the extra renown points. As you may have gathered, for the specialization, we're using Inner Sight because energy is really important. It works great with twisting blades, and in particular an aspect we're going to be running, which we'll talk about next. So here we are for the equipment section. We are going to be changing our weapons, our gear, our equipment so often that I can't say, oh, go get this aspect for the codex or whatever. There's only going to be a few options for us that we should all have as this build as we level. That is going to be your amulet, it's going to be your rings, and even your gloves if you're willing to do that. Basically, the most important aspect is the blade dancers aspect. This causes the twisting blades to orbit around you for a short time, improving your damage generally, but also improving the orbit damage based on how far the blades actually had to go to return to you. Vital for any twisting blade build. That's why it's normally on your two-hand weapon, the crossbow. But as we're leveling, our weapons are going to change so much we can't do that. So I would recommend you put the blade dancer aspect onto the amulet slot to fill that slot so you have the most powerful effect of this vital aspect. Thankfully, it's a guaranteed aspect as we can get it from the codex. You can pick up this aspect by just going and doing the dungeon Jalal's Vigil in Scotland. So that's on your amulet. What are you going to put on your rings? On the first ring, I would recommend Ravenous. This gives you up to 70% times increased energy regen as you kill vulnerable enemies. That is consistently happening in this build, so it's a major improvement to your energy generation, which is vital. Ravenous is another one we can pick up in the codex from the Shifting City dungeon in the Dry Steppes. Lastly, the third aspect you're going to want on that final ring slot is going to be Edge Masters. This deals up to 20% times increased damage based on your available primary resource at the time. So if you're at full energy, it deals even more damage. This is so good that we often have it on our two-hand weapon in a lot of builds outside of Twisting Blades. But since this is taking up our amulet slot already, we're going to have to put it on the ring, or alternatively, the glove slot if you are going to hold on to that for a while. Those three are the most important aspects we can guarantee get from the codex though, because the Edgemaster's aspect is the one you can pick up from the Old Stone dungeon in Scoz Glen. So those 3 are non-negotiable. You must go get them and get them as soon as possible on your amulet and your 2 rings, with the potential of a glove slot if you're willing to go that far. When it comes to affixes, you're not really going to be able to reliably have them as they're going to change a lot, but if you can get crit strike chance, crit strike damage, vulnerable damage, and lucky hit chance, all of those are going to be nice to have. And so we're at the Paragon section of the build. Here I'm going to show you the starter board and just the first expansion, because that's kind of reasonable to talk about and showcase from levels of roughly 60 to 70. Beyond that is unreasonable as we are going into the season fresh. This is an early build. Let's start with the starter board, coming around to the right, picking up Prime as always, working our way up towards the glyph, which we have closer in. Closer improves the cutthroat skill damage the more dexterity we have, meaning Twisting Blades gets better damage, which is amazing, while also giving us damage reduction. The secondary effect means when we're wielding that melee weapon, which we usually are, we're taking 10% reduced damage. Very nice in our new kind of getting one-shot world. It requires our main stat dexterity, which is easy to get in the starter board, so it just works really well here. As you can see, I've gathered enough dexterity in a min-max way to get to 40 out of 40 exactly. We make sure to come up to the right to pick up Lawless and the extra dexterity it provides, then leaving the board on the left through Skillful up to our first extension board, which, as you might have expected, is Exploit Weakness. Whenever you deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, they take 1% times, scaling up to 15% times, a major damage increase in all ways. I've orientated the board, as you can see, so we can leave to the right when we're ready, and we can easily get to the first glyph very quickly, which I have Combat. Combat improves your critical strike damage to everything. This was actually buffed this patch because it used to be just for core skills, so it's actually even better, and in my opinion it was so meta for every rogue build already, which is crazy. Anyway, we enter the board from the bottom, coming up and moving left and up towards the glyph to activate that and socket in Combat. We only need 25 intelligence to get the secondary effect of this, which causes skills that critically strike to restore 12% of their energy cost, which is amazing, further helping us with, say, benefiting from Edgemasters. I get the intelligence, as you can see, by coming down to the rare nodes, picking up the intelligence nodes around that, and coming left to the rare node Artifice, benefiting from the magic nodes that improve our vulnerable damage while we're here. This is very min-max, as we could get more intelligence here easily. But first, we're going to head up to the right and head to the exploit node, picking up the magic nodes around it, which are great, working our way up and to the left and around to exploit weakness itself. From there, on the way out, we can go over the top to pick up Unassailable for some nice damage reduction, and work our way to the right to the next board, where we will continue in the future. And as we are in Season 1 then, it's time to talk Malignant Hearts. Our number 1 heart, the clearly insane Vile Apothecary, is a wrathful heart that we can socket into anything because of that. However, unfortunately, it's only going to start dropping in World Tier 4, so the start of endgame basically. When we do get it, it means our attacks have a 5 to 15% chance to apply all imbuement effects, 40 to 50% of normal potency, which is insane. But that's a long-term main aim then, so what should we do before we finally get that? Well, the universal much sooner option, which is also a wrathful heart, we may even end up running both of these in the end, is Malignant Pact, cycling through a malignant bonus every 20 kills. On Vicious, you gain 20% attack speed, which is nice. On Devious, our core and basic skills have a 15% chance to fully restore your primary resource, which is insane. And then Brutal, every 21 seconds we get a little barrier, which is nice but not crazy. So as a wrathful pick, it's going to be very good, and we can get it a lot sooner than, say, our ideal one. Following that, we have some other rogue-specific options, like the Clipshot Heart, a utility lucky hit-based one, 20 to 40% chance for your cutthroat skills to slow for 40% for 3 seconds, and then your marksman skills can even knock back. Basically, that works with momentum. Our Twisting Blades will slow, as well as our dash, leading to more momentum stacks nicely in yet another way for the build. Then there's the other rogue, defensive focused one, Trickery. When you use a subterfuge skill, you leave behind an unstable shadow decoy trap that taunts enemies. It'll then blow up after 6 seconds, dealing a bit of shadow damage, and that can only occur once every 5 seconds. This works well in theory with our build because we have both Poison Trap and Dark Shroud, which can be used to trigger it. The taunt will help with survivability, keeping the heat off us, but also it might even group up enemies as they attack it. Maybe the melee enemies will pile in around it, almost like a death trap in a way. The AoE might not be overly strong itself, we'll have to see that in action, but functionally this could be really useful. Otherwise, we have General Hearts. I'm not entirely convinced about Tempting Fate Heart for us. It grants better crit strike damage, sure, but at the cost of non-crit damage. We're not critting all the time, but a lot. so it could be a problem, it could be worth it, it needs testing. The Bacana Heart might be nice, while we just need a slot to fill in for some extra AoE based on lightning. But yeah, in general, with the general hearts, everything is fine to fill in an empty slot, but the ones I've talked about are going to be my priority. But there you have it then, that's the build generally explained for the early days, say between levels 50 and 70. Twisting Blades somehow has even more potential when it comes to specifically this Imbued version build, thanks to that insane new Malignant Heart Vile Apothecary. Though obviously it's much more endgame, with it being required for World Tier 4. But before then, you're still going to have that same smooth, super fast leveling experience as before, only improved in convenient ways. Yes, it's true we're really weak compared to what we used to be before 1.1, but relative to everyone else, Rogue, and specifically Imbued Twisting Blade Rogue, stands near the top of all builds at this point. So yeah, if the video has been useful to you, please do drop a like. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and good luck in Season 1.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.